Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mason Grove School of the Art lecture series. We're very excited to have CA Conrad with us today. Before we begin, if people are comfortable and able, if you could just turn your camera on for a moment so we can say hello to CA and also to each other. Hi. It's really nice to see everyone. Welcome Rutgers students, welcome students from surrounding New Jersey colleges, and welcome students from around the world or country who just want to be here to see CA. So we're really happy that we can share this with you. For those who are joining us for the first time, the Mason Grove School of the Art lecture series is student run. It's student run. I'm Amanda, along with Anna Shea. We co-organize and coordinate from a list that's been nominated by the entire MFA student body. And we're so excited to have CA tonight. I'm going to begin quickly with a land recognition, but also I wanted to say that tonight we do have closed captioning. So if that's something you'd like, I think if you just go down to the bottom panel, you can say put subtitles on. And hopefully that should work. This is the first time we're using them, so please let us know how that works. Great, okay. So we are gathered on the unceded land of the Nanticoke and Lenni Lenape peoples. I ask you to join me in acknowledging the Nanticoke and the Lenape community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. As students of Mason Grove School of the Art, we acknowledge that Rutgers University was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples, including those on whose land this institution is located. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And so tonight we have CA, and CA Conrad has been working with the ancient technologies of poetry and ritual since 1975. They're the author of Amanda Paradise, forthcoming from Wave Books in 2021. Their book, While Standing in Line for Death, won a Lambda Literary Award. They also received a Creative Capital Grant, a Pew Fellowship, and a Believer Magazine Book Award. They teach at Columbia University in New York City and Sandberg Art Institute in Amsterdam. I'll put this link in our chat, which is where you can see all of CA's books, essays, recordings, and also upcoming events. So I shall pass it on to you, CA.
Hello, everybody. Amanda and everybody, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a wonderful day seeing people's artwork. I'm going to do this a little different than I normally do. I wanted to talk about what I'm doing right now, as well as other things. So I thought I would start with what I'm working on now and go in reverse a little bit. I thought that might be the way to go. I work with rituals. I normally start off by talking about why I do that, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later. The somatic poetry ritual that I am currently doing, well, it has a working title that's not working very well, so we won't bother with that. But it involves, among other things, dreaming with crows. And that's a complicated thing that I've been doing. Well, it's not that complicated, but it seemed more complicated at first, and it's just nothing now. It's just like what we're doing. We're dreaming together. And so I'm in Seattle. I don't know how much you know about Seattle, but it's one of the world's largest population of crows. They study crows here at the university, but I feed them on the ledge here. So it's just a little after 4 p.m. here now. So the last of the crows came by a little bit ago. Around 4 p.m. they get their last bit of food. But I carry peanuts around that are in the shell. You know, there's usually 2. You're lucky if there's 3, right? But usually there's 2. And I carry them around and I speak to them throughout the day and tell them, well, how I'm feeling, what's going on. You know, glad that Trump's gone, not dead, but at least gone. At least we have that. So the thing is, and then I break them in half, and I put half 9 halves out there for them, and I eat the other 9 halves. And then they take them to the trees across the street, which is by the bay. And they eat them, they hammer them open and they eat them. And then they always sit the same way. They face the city with their little beaks. And they like to see the twinkling lights of downtown, I think. I don't know, crows are they like twinkly things. So do I, that's why I like them. But so that's been very interesting. The dreams I've been having are not like any other dreams I've ever had. This involves other things. This ritual's complicated. I'm just going to show you, there are several aspects. I just want to show you one other part of it. I'm going to open up my, here, let's see. I'm going to share the screen. Oh, starting share screen will stop others' computer sound share. Oh, that's fine. Okay.
See, that was me. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It just was a message. I don't know. I decided to read it out loud for some reason. Here. Wow, you can see everything. I'm going to close everything. But not that, of course. So down here, this is, I'll put this up there in case you want. I'll put the website in the chat in case you want to see. Let's see. This is where I want to go to, though. Right here. So one of the things I'm doing with this is studying sunlight. And it's this whole thing about sleeping. And then I wake up in the morning, I watch the sunrise with the crows. And then during the day, I have to watch the sunrise somewhere else on planet Earth. This is one of my favorite webcams. There are a lot of, the entire planet has all of these outdoor public webcams. I'm setting them up right now as I learn them all to be able to watch the sunrise continuously for 24 hours. Look, I'm not into extreme sports. It's nothing like that. It's about meditating with these shards of light that take 9 minutes once they leave the sun to hit the surface of the planet. And then they magically feed our cholesterol to turn that into vitamin D. We are filled with vitamins because of the sunlight. It's not just illumination and warmth. It's literally sustenance, as we know. So this webcam, can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear it or not. This is a great webcam. Very few of them have a good microphone. This one's got a really good microphone. So in Tokyo, at least at this webcam, this is the rail yard at the edge of the city. The sunrise is right over here. Well, I'm in Seattle, so it's around 12:30 in the afternoon, my time, when and then it just bathes all this glass and light. It's extraordinary. And yeah. And what I like about this webcam too is, anyway, that's enough of that. I call it Ignition Chronicles. There are other aspects. For instance, this is one of them where I don't know if you can see it. There's a mark on that glass. See the mark? And what I do is I listen while I'm watching myself pour the water to that mark. And then I do that 3 times. And on the 4th time, I do it with my eyes closed. So the idea is to braid my sensory so that my ears begin doing the work of my eyes. It's part of it. I mean, that's the newer ritual I'm working on. It's more involved than that, but I think that's it. Let me share just three of the poems, new poems from this piece. Where's my little document I made for today? Here it is. Can you see that okay? Okay, good. Our little places within are not dungeons, remember, remember. Astronomers point satellites into space. The military points them down at us. The inverse relationship between love we offer and what we give. This on and off button is another opportunity to believe there are only 2 choices. This too must end. This is one of the newest ones, just from a couple days ago. I just finished it. A quest to italicize a period does not need anyone's approval any more than it requires rude comments about wasting time. In the middle of our second plague, they said, "Look over here, new toys on Mars." Looking elsewhere is another kind of looking away. It was the same during the early years of AIDS. Just ask straight people my age. How can we point at a horizon yet still fear death? Just relax. It's not a white flag out the window. It's my new panties. I will never surrender. What would it take to kill the imagination? It is important to wonder what our enemies are already thinking. You are so much blood. I love you. You're force, the force of blood. We give our thanks to the engineer of this meadow. Can you hear how it is flowing through our door, flooding, a better word? Sections of the day peel away to our curative vigor. We were going to be okay. We just did not know it at the time. So the previous ritual, just before this one, I'm going to leave this image up. You don't need to see me. Look at the bird. It's a beautiful bird, right? So the ritual that preceded the one that I was just talking about led me to the one I was just doing. It's very. Oh, the other thing that it involves that will be after I get my vaccination and can go around. I want to start smelling retail. It's like this thing that I've been doing where I just go and immerse myself with all the toxic off-gassing at IKEA and places like that. So it's like trying to figure out where all this noxious gases, where these things are coming from. But that gave me that came. So this ritual, I have a new book coming out this fall, and this is from that book. It's called Amanda Paradise. And the subtitle is Resurrect Extinct Vibration. So I am in my mid-50s, and in my lifetime, we have lost 70% of the world's wild creatures, which is breathtaking. And that remaining 30% is, it's not like they're going to still be. I mean, they're all disappearing. What I wanted to do was to think about this extinction in a way that is beyond the visual. And so I started thinking about ecopoetics. Are you familiar with ecopoetics? So let me just briefly say, a lot of people think, well, ecopoetics is a type of nature poetry, which fair enough, I understand that. But it's a little more than that. It's those of us concerned about the fragile ecosystems breaking down. So there's a little more of like a political edge often to ecopoetics. But what I wanted to include in this conversation was about how when a species leaves the planet, they take all of their sounds with them. Their heartbeat, their wing flutter, their footfall, their cries, everything gone. And we fill it in with our din of humanity. One of the things ornithologists around the world have been thinking, and I feel like since this pandemic, they've been proven right in some ways, many places, is that one of the chief causes of bird depopulation is that they can't hear one another because we are so loud, our species. And it's interesting now thinking about how with the last year in particular, where the birds could hear one another. So that's something to consider, because I'm doing this whole thing about the absence of sound, right? So it's like ecopoetics, it's it's beyond just what we can think and feel and taste. It's what we can also hear, and not just what we can hear. When you're hearing things, your entire body is absorbing them. We're 70% water. Nothing on this planet absorbs sound like water. Keeping that in mind, I drive around the United States a lot. I have a boyfriend who is a truck driver. So he and I have actually now met in all the lower 48 states. It's a strange relationship because I know I'm used to having relationships where you see the same person, like in the same apartment even, you know what I mean? But this one, it's like, no, it's a whole different location each time. And, but he drives for Walmart, and Walmart is part of the ritual. I sleep in my car in Walmart parking lots because you're allowed to do that. And part of this involves studying the topography around the Walmart. Like if I'm in Florida, there's palm trees, maybe. If I'm in Montana, it's mountains. If I'm in Arizona, of course, it's desert. So, but once you enter the Walmart, I study it with the binoculars, like the whole, all the way around. As soon as you enter this Walmart portal, and it is identical to the last one in so many ways, in more ways than I can even begin to describe. At first, I just said the simplest answers, but it's far more than that. It's emotional. It's there's some reactions you get at the moment you walk in that are the same. But anyway, I listen to these recordings of these animals in the Walmart, and I walk in a spiral formation. And I will also try to lie down on the floor, and I often get hoisted up and thrown out of the store doing that, but you know, whatever. I'm trying to write a poem. So I try and tell them, they're like, we don't care about you writing a poem. We want you out of the store. And by the way, I'm not being like completely rude about it. I'm not doing it where everybody's like shopping for shampoo. You know, I'm doing it in like a really kind of quiet place, like greeting cards, you know. Sympathy cards, why not? It's about sympathy. It's all about death. By the way, it's not one of the new poems I don't think I'm reading today, but I just put this in one of the newer poems about how the fact that I couldn't find a single sympathy card with the word death in it. It made me angry. Anyway, that's in there now as well. Okay, so let me read some of these poems. Oh, actually, no, there's more things to it than that. So there's this is something that I did. These are copper bottles. Can you see all of this on the screen? Okay. And so I went to Minneapolis and buried one of these. So these copper bottles, I bought 4 of them. Copper is conductive, was important to this. And I filled each of these with equal amounts of rose quartz, amethyst, and carnelian, and then filled it up with water, and then left an inch for freezing, etc. So the container didn't burst open underground. Then I buried them, and it's so funny. I think before 9/11, I probably wouldn't have been so worried about burying objects, but I was wondering, like, is anybody going to see me? Maybe a drone's watching me, because you know, you never know. They might think I'm planning a bomb. So Minneapolis, Memphis, and Cheyenne. And then I buried one in Omaha, Nebraska. And that was the seat. So I would go there and I would sit. This is buried in a field at the edge of the city. It's very, very, very quiet. And so I just would sit right on top of it. And I would face Minneapolis first with a compass. And then I would eat a tiny bit of dirt from the Minneapolis location, just a tiny bit, and listen to an ambient recording I made of the location where it's buried in Minneapolis. And once I'm really tuned into it, I begin writing. And then when I'm finished, I turn to Memphis and do the same, then Cheyenne, and then I do the whole thing 2 more times. It's I like it. Okay, here's one more thing. So the reason Dorothy's here, okay, so the thing is, a lot of this also has to do with the fact that I've been vegan since 1988. And I didn't grow up vegan. I grew up in the rural Pennsylvania. When I turned 9, I got my first hunting rifle. When you turn 9, you get guns where I grew up, and everybody has guns. And I don't have guns any longer, but I did then. And I would go hunting, and I was very good at it. Whatever, who cares? I'm not proud of it. I don't even want to hurt a fly now. But I was thinking, it was when I was a teenager in the 80s in Philadelphia. As a teenager, I escaped to Philadelphia, and because I don't want to stay where I'm growing up. I'm working in the factories. But AIDS, I'm in the gay community, and everybody's dying of AIDS around me. And it was I was like walking into the middle of a family tragedy, but it was my family. And it was devastating. And I lost half of everybody I knew and loved in the 80s and early 90s. And I thought, you know what? I became macrobiotic and vegan in that time period with all these friends. What can I do to bring them into this ritual, to honor that space I created with them? And I thought, well, there is no place we visited together, but if a movie can be a place, which of course it can be if we just say that it is, all of my friends and I saw The Wizard of Oz. So The Wizard of Oz became a location. And you know this scene? You've all seen The Wizard of Oz, I hope. Well, if you haven't, she does heroin, basically. Like the evil witch gives her a heroin overdose with the poppies, and she goes into a deep sleep. Doesn't last long because it snows. That's a whole other part of the story. But I freeze the frame here, and then I sit as far away as I can with binoculars and study Dorothy. And then I begin invoking the names of the dead. I start mentioning the names of all the dead. And then I start talking to them. And that becomes part of the poetry. All right, I've talked enough about that ritual. I'm going to read 3 poems from that ritual. And so yeah, this is called Amanda Paradise, Resurrect Extinct Vibration. Can I make that a little bigger? How's that? Can you see that good? Can you see that? Okay. On all fours, I am a seat for the wind. Most of my family's international travel is being sent to war. If we judge love, we can kill off anything, dragged by our hair across the days until they make their way inside our dreams where we get to evict them. I want to thank the one who invented knocking on the door, but no one remembers their name to tattoo across my knuckles. I asked an archaeologist about first time she stuck a shovel in the ground. Her answer had same restorative powers as the gravediggers. When we die, we can no longer wipe the muck off. Just lie there, becoming shit of the world. Eat a chip of your own dried blood. Join me in the cannibal sunshine, fully persuaded by the world through song. Each morning, a blue jay screams at the edge of the clear-cut forest. I scream with her at the bleeding stumps. Scream inside something borrowed, like ocean, like skin. I want to see before I die a mink wearing a human scarf, skin from a handsome hairy leg. Meow. I know minks don't meow, but they do in my poems. Visit a living being to eat what falls from their body. I am the wagon wishing you would find me, a maple left uncut, the rock that smashes nothing, seeking a God who speaks to memories of life before the heart's affliction. Your cum tastes like hand sanitizer. What have you been up to? When too many die, we deceive despair with love. Sex with a man at a funeral, destroying death in his car. A holy perforation for a ghost. For best wish, catch apple as it falls. Eat seeds and worm to seal your destiny. Everyone puts what they've got into the wheel driving across America. raw imagination faster than spirit keeps up. I cannot remember the last day a digital watch was the only digital object in my life. The first heart transplant was the last day everyone alive had hearts we were born with. Something to get used to. I was only 1 year old, but do not remember anyone objecting to someone keeping their strength with someone else's muscle. I should say that's also part of the ritual where I was trying to keep like that. I received a digital watch from my biological father, Dennis McNeil, back when I was like, I don't know, in like 1976 or something like that, which was a big deal. Nobody had digital anything then. And but that was the first digital thing in my life, maybe the first digital thing I ever saw. And then I can't tell you between then and now, between that and my laptop, the growth of that, it's lost to me, but I try to imagine it. So one more poem from this series. This is a love poem for my boyfriend, Trey. Well, my idea of a love poem. Acclimating to discomfort of the system breaking beneath us. I do not take any calls except from the century we are in. When there is no Bible in my hotel room, it makes me sad to have no place to put my filthy poems for future guests. It is important to let them know everyone should burn with abandon as soon as the heat is available. Be a self-styled alarm clock no one can shut off. Be the storm love places in someone's home. Are you sure we can handle this? Because I am absolutely certain. Come on, Win, knock us around. We are a tide that cures ills. Look at us in the mirror. As soon as the invented language enters us, something else will vibrate in our skin. Opening door with teeth of the future to the place where we let the freer feeling go. When you told me you had been looking for me, we pressed through every invisible barrier between us. I watched you gently let the gods know you are ready to win the lottery. There were people from the 19th century alive in my lifetime many years ago. I met some of them. They are all gone now as we hold on to the side of one another, howling down the velocity of seconds. Okay. So the last ritual I want to discuss, and then just briefly talk about why I started doing these, and then if anybody has questions. So this is a picture of my boyfriend, Earth, and I met Earth when I was a teenager. He was, are you all familiar with ACT UP? So he was one of the chief organizers of ACT UP in Philadelphia. And I remember the first ACT UP demonstration he convinced me to go to. It was one of the most exhilarating experiences of my life, to know that you can actually do that. You can be out there just screaming about these things that are so harmful and upsetting and violent and genocidal. And Ronald Reagan was president, you know, horrible, horrible. When I hear people, especially people my age and older, be like, Ronald Reagan was a good president, I'm like, fuck you. And I just get into it with them. I have no tolerance for hearing about how that man, just in my opinion, slaughtered tens of thousands of people of color and gay men and gay men to AIDS, made jokes about it. Everybody thinks Trump is awful. I think this shit started with Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. I think Trump is a symptom of that, frankly. But so Earth, and we lost many, many friends. And by the mid-90s, he was exhausted. Well, it was exhausting. And he went away for a little while to this queer community in Tennessee to work in the gardens. And while he was there, we still don't know who, I'm assuming it was more than one person, they went into this cave where he was meditating and they bound him and gagged him and tortured him, raped him, covered him in gasoline, and burned him alive. And the police, it was brutal enough that happened. And I was a dancer. I was very athletic. But after his murder, I started to try to make the police investigate it, and they just refused. And they either knew who did it and was protecting them, or they just didn't care. Either way, it was just awful. And eventually, the police in Tennessee are so angry at me, they send that I'm in Philadelphia at the time, living in Philadelphia. They send the Philadelphia police to my home, and they physically assault me in the hallway and scream at me. And that's when the depression really sets in. And I gained a tremendous amount of weight. It just destroyed my life for a while. So what I did was I wanted to do a ritual to like clear this depression. I thought, I believe it's possible. The last time I saw him alive, let's see if I can make this a little bigger. He gave me this crystal that this crystal was in his pocket for the better part of 2 years, a year and a half and more. And the thing that we know about crystals is that they're not just a current that it can be used in phones and clocks and computers. They're also, the chambers hold on to information. They're libraries. So because this was in his pocket for so long, I figured it was like a library of him. So I put it under my hair wrap, pointed down, and then I would swallow a smaller round crystal. And I did this at an artist colony called the McDowell Art Colony. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's in New Hampshire. And here's the fun. So basically, I would eat the crystal in the morning. And of course, you got to make sure that it's very small and smooth, or you'll be in the emergency room. But then, of course, you go to the bathroom and then you fish it out of the toilet and you sterilize it and you start all over again. So I'm talking about this. I'm doing a presentation at McDowell, and unbeknownst to me, one of the directors, Cheryl, was in the back of the room, and she came up to me after. She's like, "You mean you've been shitting crystals at McDowell?" And I said, "Yeah, I have." She's like, "That's awesome. Can you make a video about this?" Anyway, here's the good news though about this. I felt dynamite in like a week. Oh my God, I felt so much better. And it just got better and better and better. Here's the first piece of evidence. I made a movie in my head, a fiction, that the police, how like this injustice was just continuous. So I was like, well, maybe the police will become human beings. Maybe they'll capture the killers. There's a courtroom drama, I imagine. Well, here's the thing. After a week of swallowing crystals and all this stuff, that movie dissipated and went to nothing. And it's been just feeling better ever since. Let me just read 3 of these little poems from this ritual. Can you see that? All right, I think you can. A spider's web is made of digested fly brains, wings, hairs, legs, tears, pheromones, attracting more flies, dissolving us into the endeavor of love. Hold me to your song, it is delicious. Hear you one more time in middle of night, tooth it open. Love all unloved parts without pause. Dear ghost, flickering with flames that no longer hurt. Deflated lungs expanding. You say they can only burn a faggot once. When you died the way you died, it was contaminating, a new danger of being lost and insecure. But reality can never be avoided forever. At the same moment, who is afraid of whom? The killers or my beloved, or guilt of my continued song? Desire is not what we achieve. It's a knife often carving the wrong way or racking in the alchemy of a mood. I should never trade youth for poetry's resonance of aging. but I can put every poem I ever wrote in a pile and burn them if you would appear on the other side. I'm going to end with this one because this is the one where the depression broke and I started feeling better. So I just wanted to say this is an homage, this one, to one of the things that he and I did a lot in Philadelphia when we were, well, he was a few years older than I am, but, you know, just really young people in the 80s and 90s. We would plant rogue gardens and abandoned lots and along riverbanks and flowers and fruits and vegetables. And then we would gather them and harvest them and, you know, make a big potluck with friends. The spirit of your flowers is my favorite shelter. We were in love is the main thing. Faintest green light entry pulls me forward. Whenever life is beautiful makes me think of you. Carry color of the forest to be with you. To belong to this world with you. To have what we have, and that is it. Yes, the present is between the past and future, but is too radical to be called the middle. I want to very briefly, I just want to very briefly as possible, tell you how I got started doing this, and then just in case anybody has questions. So I grew up in rural Pennsylvania in a factory town. I was actually born in Topeka, Kansas. Who cares? All that. Nobody cares about anything. I don't even care about that. What's important to this story about the rituals is that in Pennsylvania, and all my family in Iowa as well, they're all factory workers, and they're all factory workers in Pennsylvania, in the Conrad family. My original last name is McNeil, then my mother remarried, and I got this other last name. Anyway, I ran away as a teenager to Philadelphia. I was like, I am not working in these factories, forget it. And I loved my life, except for the fact that everybody was dying around me, and it was tragic and horrible. And the thing is, too, that people forget, you know, it's like, well, maybe you don't forget because you weren't there. But the thing is about that time period, it wasn't just that you knew people who were dying. No, no, no. Every single day, somebody needs to go to the doctor. Somebody needs groceries. There's a lot to do when that many people are dying, you know, and sick. So the entire queer community back then was activated in this way. But no, but here's the thing. I loved that I was writing. I loved my life in many ways. So from 1984 to 2005, from 1975, when I started writing, to 2005, I'm writing in the old-fashioned way where you're inspired and you write. That's what I call it. I don't know. But then in 2005, I had all these friends around me who were the creative writing programs, you know, they have arrived at this point, and now the city's flooded with different kind of poets. And most of these poets that I was meeting for the first time, they came from a different background, like their family were engineers, lawyers, doctors, professional people, white collar workers, in other words, not factory workers. And I realized that that was key to this. Because well, here's what I found out very simply. If you're going to survive working at a factory, like my family, they work for 12-hour shifts as an extension of a machine all day long. If you are an extension of a machine for most of your waking hours, you do not want to be present for that. You shut the present down, and in your mind, you live in these default systems of the past and the future. And when I speak to my family, I can hear it. They are depressed about the past or anxious about the future. There's nothing in the middle. They've lost the present, if they ever had it, because they were also raised by factory workers. This is a coping mechanism I'm talking about. See? And so this coping mechanism, I absorbed it. And I didn't know it. And in 2005, I discovered this. And what I did is I created these rituals to anchor myself in the present. The first ones I did in 2005, I ate a single color of food for a day for 7 days and would wear the color. I went through the color spectrum. The first day was red, orange, yellow, you know. the red poem, when I was, the first one I ever did was the red poem. I was eating red food. I used food coloring, you know, it's about consuming the color, you know. And, but I found a red wig and a dumpster behind it. I know I'm not a dumpster diver, although I have a lot of friends who are. It was poking out of the dumpster. I don't want you to think that I'm like some heroic like art person. No, my friends do that. I like, if I see it poking out, I might take it, but I'm not going in, you know. And but I love this wig, but there was a lot of muck to comb out of it. But you know, here's the thing about this wig. Half of it was straight and the other half was really long, by the way, like longer than my hair is now. And it's like, when I say the other half is permed, I mean, it was like, and then would kind of dangle. So it's like this, like really straight and like this. And prior to this crisis of trying to figure out this problem that I needed to solve, I like to go to bookstores like Barnes and Noble. Well, I don't like Barnes and Noble at all. I don't spend money there, but I like to go to Barnes and Noble and use it as a library because they have very up-to-date books. I like to go to the business section, because those marketing books, that to me is the new anthropology, because they're studying us, those creeps, to sell us stuff we don't want. And what I do is I use all that research on how to sell us things for my rituals. But at the time, I didn't know, I wasn't even doing rituals at the time, but I read this thing that they had discovered was that 80 to 90% of human interaction is nonverbal. Isn't that awful? I don't know how they found that out, but I can guarantee you they're right. They're pretty right about these things. Anyway, I was like, that is astonishing. I can't believe that most of our communication, I mean, most of it, almost all of it. So I was like, well, let's see how that works with this red ritual. So I walk around with this wild wig. It's like, psh, psh. And every stranger I would see out on the sidewalk that day would go, they were just constant nonverbal communication with me. And that nonverbal communication fed the poem. At the end of that day, I learned two really basic things. One, it worked. I was present the entire time. Second thing I learned, there's no way I would have ever written that poem for any other reason at any other time. So I realized very quickly that orchestrating through the ritual builds and makes the language. So whatever I'm doing within a ritual, if I just like shift an ingredient in a ritual, it alters the language as it comes out of me. I feel like that's enough. That's enough. So if you want to ask questions, please feel free.
CA, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, no, thank you. Everyone, you can just come forward and ask questions, or you can write them in the chat if you don't feel comfortable asking them out loud.
So I have a question. Like, you're describing where you came from in rural Pennsylvania, and I come from like rural Texas, Katy, Texas. Like, can you talk about your transition to like, because you're so solid on this form of knowing, sense making, understanding, and I'm just like, what was that process like, going from one like carceral ideology to an open ideology of possibility?
Carrie, thank you. Nobody's ever asked me that, and I'm so glad you did ask me that. It was rough. I mean, okay, so here's the thing. I think my transition, I think you mean as a human being, right? And at least I think that's what you mean. So I do have to say this. There was a documentary made about me. The documentary filmmakers went to where I grew up. I don't think they necessarily believed me when I said what it was. And then they saw it and they were like, wow, this is really awful. So it is the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan in the Eastern Seaboard. And so I grew up with all these like people that are just, you know, you hear about systemic racism. This is not that. This is just constant. And in 1982, I am in high school, and Ronald Reagan begins making jokes about AIDS with his press secretary. When they would ask about AIDS, they would make a gay joke because they're so sensitive. And what happens is I'm outed. I forget, it's like right before that. And trust me, I didn't want to be out. It's so violent there. It's like awful. And immediately it's like a switch got flipped and there's no going back. And the violence begins immediately, physical and just people yelling, just saying things whenever they feel like it. And it did not help at all that the president of the United States was saying that, yeah, gay people should probably fucking die. You know what I mean? Like that's what you mean when you're making a joke about them dying. I assume that they deserve it, right? Or that it's funny. So it was brutal. But here's the thing. I decided I'm just going to fuck it. I'm going all the way. I'm going to survive this. My mother was trying to get me to drop out of high school. My mother, by the way, hated this town. She hated it. And she divorced the Conrad family in less than a year. Like she was like, nah, what am I doing here? Why did I bring my child here? Anyway, I invented the genderless, I used to call it gender neutral. It's not gender neutral. The genderless name C.A. Conrad in 1984. Because at that point, I'm like, you know what? Fuck you all. I'm going to live the life I want to live. I'm either going to kill myself or I'm going to like just go straight ahead. So I decided to just go straight ahead, and it was not easy. But I'll tell you one thing, dealing with all these violent, horrible people got me ready for the violence of the literary world and the art world. And like every time I would win an award, it's like they leave you alone when you're not winning anything or being published. And as soon as you get published, the knives come out. And then I'd be like, really, do you know what I've lived through? You actually think that's going to affect me? What you just said to me? I've been called everything. Forget it. Save it for the next person. You're wasting your breath. If anything, I'm just going to like work harder now because you're coming at me like that, you know? But that's not easy. It's really not easy to do that. And I don't know if I would be able to do it as easily if I hadn't gone through what I went through. I'll tell you this though, the genderless name, my first published poem was in high school in 1984. And I wanted that name to go to that poem. And they said, well, it has to be your real name. I was like, that is my real name. And they, well, we'll look into it. And then they published it under my given name anyway. So, but I swore after that it would never happen again. And then here I find out when I go to Philadelphia and I start trying to talk to gay and lesbian people in particular about this genderless name, they don't want to hear it. The trans community was all, listen, the trans community has always been the coolest part of the gay and lesbian. When you talk about the LGBTQ, the T and the Q are the coolest parts. The others can be, but they also cannot be. Trust me. They can be like, there are a lot of gay and lesbian bureaucrats who are just miserable and they want to make the rest of us miserable too, I feel. Oh my God, Carrie, that was the longest answer. But nobody's ever asked me that before. I hope I don't even know, maybe that isn't what you were wanting to know. I don't know.
It was a start. Thank you. Yeah, I'm catching up. Also, I invited my friend Selena from Houston, who's a brilliant poet, and she was able to chime in. So I just feel grateful about these communities coming together. And yeah, thank you, because I don't have a context in poetry, but what you have described is like the work I'm trying to do as an artist. And that's very fortifying. So thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you, Carrie. Are there any other questions? Would you like me to say one more thing if there are no more questions? I'm gonna say, go ahead, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Marissa. Thank you so much for this. This has been wonderful. I have a question as somebody who I don't necessarily do have a practice around like these meditative rituals, but I'm curious because they're your way of staying present. Do you often find yourself disassociating? So is it your way of sort of getting back to yourself and your body of doing these rituals, and like getting in touch with staying grounded and being, you know, connected to the universe because you find yourself feeling untethered at times?
Marissa, thank you for asking that. Well, I'll say this. I'm glad you asked that. Nobody's ever asked that before either. And, you know, let me just say this, actually kind of the opposite. When I'm doing my work, I feel like I've worked so hard, especially after my boyfriend was murdered. I'll be honest with you, in the mid-90s, this is what I'm thinking about once everybody's vaccinated from COVID-19. Like, for those of us who survived, somehow managed to remain HIV negative through the 80s and 90s, we treated like the mid-90s like the roaring 20s. And I kind of wish we had worked a little harder at grieving. But after my boyfriend was murdered, I started getting as much help as I could. So no, I don't dissociate, but I do have to say that the work I do is itself grounding. And I do it because I want to be fully present when I'm doing it. That's mainly the reason. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Romantic love. Oh yeah. Let's see there. Go ahead. Is somebody trying to say something? I think I'm constantly, is somebody trying to speak? I don't know.
I think there's a question in the chat from Jenny that I can read out loud. Yeah. So Jenny's wondering if you're comfortable if you would talk about romantic love and companionship. You mentioned your family is constantly upset about the past and worried about the future. I feel that has a lot of resonance in romantic love. Would love to hear you speak some more about that.
Thank you, Jenny. Well, you know, I think the thing that I learned as a teenager during the early years of AIDS is to just, you know, I feel really lucky to have been around the older queers that I was around back then. I don't have any type of jealousy in me. And I don't like being with partners who do. I've never really had, like, there are people I see and we're like together, but it's never been exclusive ever in my life. I'm not interested in that. So, yeah, I think it's like a very different kind of. I'll also say we worked very, very hard in the 80s and 90s to be very open about the sex and the relationships we were having, because straight people around the world wanted us all to never have sex again or die, one or the other. That's what they wanted. And we were like, first of all, we're going to live if we can, and we're going to have as much sex as possible and let you know about it as often as possible. Just because it's really awful to constantly being told that, like, the things you desire are your cause, you know, like you deserve it, that kind of thing, just constantly, you know. I don't really know what else to say about that. I don't tolerate jealousy, though, I'll tell you that. As far as romantic love, I just don't have a lot of time for that. Just like, oh my God, you know, like, doesn't mean anything. I don't think I did a very good job answering that question. Oh, does your writing come, this is from Barnett. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Hi, I have a question. Does your writing come to you, or do you work towards language? Thank you for asking that. So, well, the thing is about these rituals, one of the things I'm going to do when I'm vaccinated is get glasses, because the tape, it's just ridiculous. It's driving me crazy. But I'm not going to go get a new eye test and then die of COVID after staying isolated all this time. It's ridiculous, you know? The thing is, since I've been writing through these rituals, Barnett, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It's very different the way that I used to write. And the way that I'm writing now is literally, I will write to exhaustion at times in blocks. And I will use, and I will write like a child at times and just to go outside. I deliberately use lined paper and disrespect the lines because I want anything that's going to keep me encased and in check to be gone. The goal is to write as fast as I can to get ahead of that internal editor. You know, that internal editor is invaluable. We need that editor, but it gets in the way of this raw language. You know, I'm trying to get that magical language that makes these poems. I can tell you for certain that when I'm finished, like, okay, you saw the poems, right? Here, let me just bring this up. Like, look at this tiny poem. Watch this go back to these newer ones. Like that, believe it or not, is from about a dozen pieces of printer paper, 12-point font, single spaced, every single page filled with words. It drives novelists crazy because I accumulate so much language and then I get rid of 90%. Actually, probably more like 90. I only keep like 2% of it. I'm not interested in volume. I'm interested in, you know, something else. So yeah, it's like this, it's like a lot of writing and then I go through it and then I call what I like and put it together.
So I have a quick question, sort of on a similar note. I noticed that your poems are all in a sort of concrete shape. And when I first saw the section that you were talking about, your somatic poetry, I recognized a couple of them resemble various parts of the body, but then also you have ones from other rituals that still have that kind of concrete shape, but it's different. Is there a particular like shape in mind that you have going into a poem, or do you find the shape as you pick the words?
Is your name Mady?
Sorry, it's Maddie.
Maddie. Hi, Maddie. Thank you. No, I just saw the name there. I wanted to make sure I was pronouncing your name correctly. Maddie. So thank you for asking that. I'm gonna share the screen to answer you because it's I don't think it's just not going to be what you would imagine the answer to this. So here, let me open this up. Uh-oh, that's not it. Oh, here it is. I found it. So I need to share the screen. And so this is the new manuscript. Here, wait, let me just, so let me just go through the poems till I get to it. Wait. There. So you see this shape? That's one of the poems. And that poem is called Golden in the Morning Crane Our Necks. I'll just read this. When I began writing poems using somatic poetry rituals, they became shapes. At first, I tried to allow the poem to languish on the left margin, but I felt ill. Then I felt anxious while also feeling compelled to move the lines off of the left margin. The more I pushed the words into the page's interior, the better I felt. Muses, ghosts, spirits, there is no doubt of their existence to me. On occasion, I have met people who say they do not believe, and I am okay with that. For those who do believe in spirits who guide us in our poems, let me share a couple of things. One morning, as I was waking, a voice came to me from the dimension I was about to leave upon waking. The voice said, quote, "You have too many straight lines in your human world. We want to show you the way out of the violence of the line," unquote. After that, I never again resisted shaping the poems and was eager to allow all the help they wanted to offer. Another morning, the voice said, quote, "The shape of a poem is the space between us. The poems are the bridge we use to one another," unquote. Who are you? Many was the answer. Many? I began thinking of all the beautiful people I knew who died, not just grandparents who I also loved, but the many souls I knew who died of AIDS, painters, singers, prostitutes, janitors, poets. The many who died were somehow pushing up to my ear, to my hair and face, singing a little song for me to translate. From 1975 to 2005, they allowed me to write most of my poems on the left margin. From 2005, they have wanted me to explore the broader reasons I find sustenance and strength in the poem's work. So that's the answer, Maddie. And actually, do you want to hear one more thing about one of these shaped poems? I'm going to back up, let's see, to one particular poem. There it is. Let me just read it and then I'll explain it. This is an actual occurrence. So this actually took, so I've been thinking a lot about COVID while AIDS, during COVID. And this is a memory from like, I don't know, 1992. M drew his face the day he was diagnosed HIV positive and kept drawing as his face changed. They were sublime, like Munch's self-portrait with Spanish flu. He called on his deathbed at his parents' home to say his father was in the backyard burning the stack of drawings. I wanted to make him stop. Please don't, he said. It's his last chance to deny me. How can I deny him that? So here's the thing. Literally, the day this was published online in Cunning Folk magazine, I had a dream. Now, I don't know about you, but this looks a little like a rabbit to me. And here's what happens that evening when I'm sleeping. I hear that conversation on the phone again. And I can hear my friend telling me all about these things and about how he doesn't even remember what his mother looks like when she's not crying, what the doctor said, things like that. Well, in the dream, I'm hearing him, but I'm in the backyard of his house and I'm down in the grass and I'm like looking through the grass. I'm like, why am I lying on the ground? Well, guess what it was? I was watching through the eyes of a witness. There was a rabbit that was at the edge of the yard while this happened. And I was literally watching because I was like, why does this image keep moving around? The rabbit is chewing grass and eating grass. And I can see his father with his one hand over his forehead, and his back is to this barrel burning all these drawings. But I can see that he's looking at something on the ground, and I can see this like little curl, and it's the edge of a piece of paper. And I realized that's one of the drawings of his son that he made of his own face. And I could see very clearly at that point why that was a rabbit. So that's a very long answer.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Any more questions? CA, thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me put one thing in the chat for everybody to take away. Since I talked about all this stuff, I thought you might be interested. This is an essay that I wrote. It was published last April about AIDS and poetry and the arts. And here, I'll put it over here. That photo, if you save that for later to read later, the photograph of me on top is it's from the 80s, and I'm wearing this dancer outfit because when I say I was a dancer, I didn't mean that I was like in art school dancing. I was dancing on stage for men. I was like a go-go dancer. So that was a go-go dancing outfit, and I had a poetry reading to do afterwards. And so yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I feel like they're trying to close this really hard, but I want to hear about your movement practice. Because you were talking, yeah, because you led off with like somatic poetry. So I'm just like, what about the body? Like, tell me more. Please tell
Oh,
me
yeah.
more.
It's all about the body all the time with these rituals. And it's like how my body is, well, also I'm considering like, well, what I put in my body when I wake up in the morning, like how is that going to affect the writing? You know, just everything. And but the body is constantly engaged, whether I'm pushing sound into it with the extinct animals, or whether I am well, there are ones that I did with my boyfriend where I had him slice open the side of my hand with his Bowie knife. And it wasn't because I'm into pain. I'm not actually at all into pain. It was because I wanted to study it it takes 27 days for human cells to proliferate. I wanted to study that, all the blood, and taste the blood at first while I was doing it. Yeah, the body is always involved with these. It's a big dance.
Yeah, someone is asking about Carolyn asked, will you be doing more Zoom conversations? How can we find out about them? I'm like looking
Oh.
at your website now. Should I put that in?
Oh, here, let me put this up. Thank you for asking, Carol. And this, I'll just put this up here. Oh, what did I just do? I don't know. I did something wrong. All right, here it is. I put my events on this. Oh, God, I did it again. Here, I'm going to do it right this time. I'm trying to copy and paste this thing. I'm not.
Oh, is it the events portion off your website? I have that. Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Oh, yeah, I'm making a big mess out of this. I think because I keep pushing the wrong button. Oh, that's what it is. I keep pushing the wrong button. Oh, well. There it is. Oh, yeah. Thanks. You already put it up there for me. Thank you.
Why not twice? Right.
Did I put the blog up if anybody's interested? You can find it if you want. It's all there. All the glorious messes. Yeah, that's right.
Are you giving a
Wow.
writing class? Are
Oh,
you
I
are you
love it.
giving a writing class or something somewhere?
Oh, I will be. Well, I'm teaching in Columbia, but that's not open to the public. I will be doing public ones soon.
And that will be in your website?
That'll be on there on that website. It'll be posted soon, actually. Yeah. Wow, look at that hair. Corey, is that your name, Corey? Those are amazing. That's an amazing photograph.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Last call? Great.
Well, it's been beautiful. Thank you. I was really lucky to get to visit with some of the artists today in their studios. Loved it.
See, thank you so much. It's a total honor to have you.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you all for coming. A week from today, we have Caitlin Cherry at 7 o'clock doing a lecture. So thank you all and enjoy the rest of your night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.